He bought me for one night, but that night changed everything. Secrets, desire, and betrayal collide in a story you won't be able to look away from. Hit subscribe, smash the like button, and comment if you're ready to see how love can't be bought. The night I met Damien Holt, New York felt like it was holding its breath. Rain slicked the sidewalks, swallowing the glow of yellow cabs and smearing neon against the glass towers. I hurried down West 57th, coat clinging to my legs, phone buzzing every few minutes with another message from the hospital. Final notice. Payment overdue. Inside the Aurelia Lounge, time slowed. Gold light poured over marble, a pianist touched low notes that hummed in my chest, and men in tailored suits leaned close to whisper prices that didn't belong to my world. I told myself I was just there to talk, to look, to maybe earn enough to keep my brother on a hospital bed one more week. That's when I saw him. Damien Holt didn't blend in like the others. The room bent around him. Tall, sharp-featured, gray eyes that felt like winter sky right before snow. Everyone else looked polished. He looked dangerous. He noticed me before I could look away. First time here? His voice was low, steady, British edges softened by something older, quieter. I nodded, trying to remember how to breathe. You could tell? You're still deciding if you should run. He smiled faintly when I didn't answer. Sit with me. I told myself it was just conversation. But the way his gaze held mine made it clear he wasn't talking about words. We talked anyway. About art, my failed gallery submissions. About code, his world of startups and mergers. He listened too carefully, like every word I said cost him something. Then he said it, simply as if offering dessert. I'll give you $10,000 for one night. My pulse jumped. 10,000. More than I'd seen in months. Enough to keep my brother alive. I began, but the sentence died when he leaned closer. No cameras. No audience. Just dinner, a drink, and honesty. After that, what happens is your choice. It sounded clean. Almost safe. But there was heat beneath the calm, a current that dared me to step closer. I'll do it, I heard myself say. His car was waiting outside, black glass swallowing the streetlights. The ride to his penthouse passed in silence, broken only by the rhythmic wipe of rain against the windshield. When the elevator opened to the top floor, I forgot how to move. The space was vast, glass walls, city lights spilling like constellations, art pieces worth more than my future. Damien handed me a towel, motioned toward a fireplace flickering near the window. You're soaked. I toweled off awkwardly, aware of his eyes tracing every movement. He poured bourbon into 2 glasses, handed one to me. To bad decisions, he said. I laughed, the sound thinner than I meant it to be. To expensive ones. We drank. The silence after was louder than the rain outside. He asked about the painting on my phone's lock screen, my brother's portrait. I told him the truth. That the bills were killing me faster than the debt collectors ever could. That I'd stopped believing in happy endings a long time ago. Something changed in his expression, softer, almost protective. Money shouldn't decide who lives, he said quietly. Yet it does. We stood there for a moment, just breathing the same air. His hand brushed mine when he took the glass, and the spark that followed felt deliberate. You're nervous, he murmured. You make people nervous. He smiled, slow, devastating. Do I? The next heartbeat was pure gravity. He stepped closer, close enough that I felt the warmth of him, smelled rain and whiskey and something expensive. His fingers found the edge of my jaw, tracing upward until my breath caught. Tell me to stop, he said. But I didn't. I couldn't. The kiss was inevitable, like the moment before thunder breaks. Slow, searching, pulling every ounce of fear and need out of me. His control slipped first. Mine vanished right after. I forgot about money. About rules. About anything except the way his hands framed my face like he was memorizing it. When he lifted me against him, I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I didn't stop it. Sometime later, minutes, hours, I couldn't tell, the city lights bled into darkness. The rain softened. All that remained was the quiet rhythm of breath and heartbeat in the vastness of that penthouse. The night blurred into warmth and movement and a tenderness I hadn't expected from someone like him. Nothing was said, but everything was understood. When I finally opened my eyes again, gray dawn filtered through the windows. Damien stood by the glass wall, shirt unbuttoned, coffee in one hand. The city stretched behind him, endless and alive. He turned when he heard me stir. Good morning. I sat up, pulling the sheet closer. You don't sleep? Rarely. A faint smile. I didn't want to wake you. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It felt weighted, fragile, real. He set the coffee down, crossed to me, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You're different, Evan." I swallowed. "Different how?" "Most people want something from me. You only wanted enough to save someone else." He paused, then added quietly, "Stay with me. A month. Name your price." For a second I thought I misheard. "You want to buy another night?" I asked. His eyes held mine. "No. I want to buy time." I didn't answer. The city kept moving outside, cars streaming like veins of light, as if New York didn't care that something impossible had just been offered. And yet I felt it, the shift, the hook, the pull of something that wasn't just money or pity or desire. Something that might break me if I wasn't careful. I looked at him, at the man who had bought one night and somehow made it feel like the start of everything. "Okay," I whispered. His smile was small, almost disbelieving. "Okay." That was the moment I should have walked away. But the truth is I'd already sold more than a night. I just didn't know it yet. Morning came in soft streaks of silver that cut through the penthouse glass. I sat at the breakfast table, half dazed, trying to decide whether last night had been a fever dream. Damien had left a neatly folded envelope beside a cup of black coffee. Inside, I found a contract printed on thick paper and a fountain pen that probably cost more than my rent. 1 month. Terms: confidentiality, discretion, mutual respect, private companionship. Payment: generous enough to erase every hospital bill and debt I had. I traced my finger over the signature line. My chest felt tight, the kind of pressure that came before a leap. Damien walked in quietly, tie half knotted, sleeves rolled up. Even his movements seemed deliberate, like he lived in slow motion while the rest of the world rushed around him. "You read it?" he asked. "Yes." "And?" "I don't know," I admitted. "It feels like I'm signing away something I can't name." He met my eyes. "You can walk away now. No one's keeping you here." I should have. But I didn't. I signed. By noon, his driver had taken me downtown to collect my things from my shared apartment. The guys I lived with stared when the black car pulled up at the curb. I stuffed my paints and worn sketchbook into a bag, heart pounding. When I returned to the penthouse, a uniformed housekeeper met me with a polite smile and showed me to a guest room that was larger than my entire apartment. The view looked over Central Park, green and gold under the late sun. There was a closet full of clothes in my size, tailored shirts, soft sweaters, shoes that fit perfectly. I wanted to protest, to tell him I didn't need any of it. But part of me, the part that had grown tired of scraping for dignity, stayed silent. Damien's world was made of order. Breakfast at 8, meetings at 9, workouts, dinners with investors, nights spent reading by the fire while the city hummed below us. I was part of the routine now, present but peripheral, like a quiet song in the background. At first I thought he'd treat me like decoration. But he didn't. He asked questions. Real ones. About my art. About how color changed the way I saw people. About why I painted faces and not landscapes. "Because people move," I told him once, brushing blue across a small canvas. "The city doesn't." He nodded like he understood. Movement makes truth easier to hide. There were nights he came home late, jacket over his arm, exhaustion carving shadows under his eyes. I'd be sitting on the couch, sketching. He'd pause beside me, glance at the drawing and say quietly, "Keep that one. It looks alive." I started sketching him when he wasn't looking. His hands, the way his mouth curved when he was thinking, the stillness in his shoulders when he watched the skyline. On the third night, I found him on the balcony, staring out at the city with a glass of scotch in hand. The air smelled like rain and smoke. "Why me?" I asked, stepping beside him. He didn't look at me. "You didn't ask for anything. That's a terrible reason to keep someone around." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I've learned that people who don't ask often need the most." I turned to him. "And what about you? What about me? What do you need, Damien?" He was quiet for a long moment, the city's pulse echoing below us. Then he said softly, "To forget." A week passed like that, steady rhythm, soft conversation, glances that lasted a second too long. The tension was quieter now, woven between moments instead of demanding them. One evening we were eating dinner, roasted salmon, wine, candlelight reflected off glass. He asked if I'd finished the painting I'd started the night we met. "Almost," I said. "But I'm missing something." "What?" "The truth." He leaned back. "You think you can paint that?" "I can try." He smiled, then, the first real one I'd seen. It wasn't the sharp, polished expression he gave the world. It was tired, honest, human. That night, I dreamed of light falling across his face, and when I woke he was standing by the door watching me. "Couldn't sleep," he murmured. "You were talking in your dream." "What did I say?" "My name." The room went still. He crossed to the bed, the city lights spilling gold across his shoulders. For a moment, I thought he would step away again, retreat behind his walls. Instead, he brushed his thumb across my temple. "Sleep, Evan." And somehow I did. Days blurred into each other. The contract on the counter grew creased from where I'd moved it around, unread but binding all the same. Yet something between us kept shifting, slowly, dangerously. When we sat together in the evenings, I noticed how often he reached for my coffee mug instead of his, or how he'd wait for me to start talking before opening his laptop. One afternoon, the sky broke open with rain. I stood by the window watching the glass streak and shimmer. Damien came up behind me, voice low. "You miss home?" he said. "Yes." He handed me a small canvas. On it, a rough sketch of a boy with tired eyes. "My brother." "I found the photo on your phone," he said. "I hope you don't mind." Emotion caught in my throat. "You drew this?" "Badly," he said almost shyly. "But I wanted you to have something here that isn't me." I turned, the distance between us vanishing. The look he gave me wasn't ownership or pity, it was something close to apology. And before I could speak, thunder rolled across the sky. The lights flickered and the world dimmed into a golden hush. He reached for my hand, hesitant this time. The warmth of his fingers said more than words could. "You don't have to be afraid," he said. "I'm not." The air between us felt alive. For a moment we simply stood there, two silhouettes against the storm. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "Some rules are meant to be broken." That night, I lay awake listening to the rain on the glass. The contract still sat on the table, but something invisible had rewritten it. It wasn't about time or money anymore. It was about the quiet space between two people who had stopped pretending not to care. I didn't know what would happen next. I just knew I wasn't leaving. A month in Damien's world felt like living inside a watch. Every moment precise, polished, quietly ticking toward something I couldn't yet name. The city outside kept roaring, but up here the sound was all heartbeat and glass. Most mornings began with the scent of coffee and the soft click of his laptop. He'd be sitting at the marble counter, sleeves rolled, eyes fixed on numbers and contracts. Yet every time I passed behind him, he'd glance up, as if to make sure I was still real. Some nights we'd talk until the city dimmed. He told me about his mother, a painter who sold her first piece the same year his father built his first company. "They loved each other too much to last," he'd said, half smiling. "She taught me beauty, he taught me control. I inherited both, and they don't get along." I told him about growing up in Port Harcourt, about coming to New York on a scholarship that disappeared when the program ran out of funds. How my brother's illness kept me chained to a country I'd left behind. "Art doesn't pay," I said. "It can," he answered, "if you stop painting to survive and start painting to speak." Sounded like a challenge. Maybe it was. By the second week, the walls between us had grown thin. We moved through each other's spaces without asking. He'd read by the window while I painted. Sometimes he'd hum under his breath, low and rough, the sound threading through the quiet. Once he came home early and found me asleep on the couch, charcoal stains on my fingers. When I woke, a blanket covered me and a note sat on the table. "You dream louder than you speak." I didn't know what he meant, but I kept the note. The turning point came on a Saturday. We were supposed to attend a charity gala, one of those rooms where diamonds weighed more than conversation. I wore a tailored black suit from his closet. He adjusted my tie himself, fingers brushing my throat. "Try not to look miserable," he said lightly. "I'll try not to faint from imposter syndrome." He laughed, the sound catching me off guard. "You fit here more than you think." At the gala, cameras flashed. The air smelled of champagne and power. People turned to greet Damien, all smiles sharp enough to cut. He introduced me as a friend from the art world. I tried to look like I belonged. Halfway through the night, a reporter from a gossip column cornered us. "Mr. Holt, who's your mysterious date?" Damien's jaw tightened. "Private company." Her smile widened. "Private as in personal or professional?" Before he could answer, I said quietly, "Both." Her pen froze. Damien's hand found mine under the table, grip steady but warning. I felt the tremor beneath his calm. When we got home, he didn't speak for a long time. He poured 2 drinks, set one in front of me, and stared out at the skyline. "You can't say things like that," he said finally. I was joking. They don't hear jokes. They hear headlines. I wanted to argue, but the hurt in his voice stopped me. I didn't mean to. He waved it off, but the distance lingered. 2 days later, the headline appeared anyway. Tech mogul Damien Holt seen with paid companion at Manhattan Gala. The article was cruel, half-truths stitched with innuendo. It mentioned my student loans, my brother's hospital bills, my art posted on a free website. It made everything sound dirty. By noon, the story had spread across every finance blog and gossip site in the city. I turned off my phone, but it kept buzzing like an accusation. Damien's assistant showed up at the apartment with a crisis team. PR specialists, lawyers, advisors. I heard them in the other room, voices clipped and clinical. When he finally came out, he looked tired in a way I'd never seen before. "They want me to deny it," he said. "Then do it." He flinched. "That's not what I expected you to say. What else is there? If you defend me, they'll crucify you. If you deny me, you get your reputation back." He stared at me for a long time as if weighing two impossible costs. "Evan?" "Say it," I whispered. "I was a hired companion. That's what they want to hear." His mouth opened, but no words came. The silence between us was louder than any argument. Finally he nodded once. "You should pack your things." I left before the statement aired, before I could hear him say it out loud. The driver didn't ask questions. The city outside looked different now, less like opportunity, more like escape. At my old apartment, my roommates pretended not to know me. The article had reached everyone. The envelope of money I'd left untouched sat in my bag like a curse. For 3 nights I didn't paint. I didn't sleep either. The space where Damien's world had been was suddenly too quiet. On the 4th morning I opened my sketchbook. I drew his face from memory, the way he looked when he thought no one was watching. The drawing came out raw, imperfect, alive. I titled it "The Man Who Tried Not to Love Me." I sent a photo of it to the gallery that had once rejected me. They called back within the hour. A month later, my work hung in a small Brooklyn studio, just a few streets from the river. People walked past, stopped, asked questions. They saw color, story, vulnerability. None of them knew that every shade of gray in those paintings came from the memory of him. One evening, after the crowd thinned, I stood alone before the portrait that started it all. The door opened behind me. I didn't turn right away. I already knew the sound of his footsteps. "Should I leave?" he asked quietly. "You already did." He moved closer, stopping beside me. The board forced the statement. I signed it, but it wasn't the truth. I looked at him then. He seemed older, stripped of the armor he always wore. "Why are you here?" "To tell you that money can buy silence but not peace." He paused. "And to see if the painting looks like me." "It looks like the man you tried not to be," I said. He smiled faintly. "Then you captured me perfectly." For a long moment we said nothing. The gallery lights cast twin shadows on the wall, 2 outlines almost touching. "I ruined everything," he murmured. "No," I said softly. "You just proved we were real." When he left, he didn't ask for forgiveness and I didn't offer it. But as the door closed behind him, I felt the air shift again, the same way it had the night we met. Maybe love wasn't something you could own. Maybe it was something you lost and kept losing until it finally stayed. I turned back to the painting, to the man whose absence had filled every corner of my life, and whispered, "You bought my time, Damien. But you'll never stop living in my art." Winter came early that year. The city wore frost like regret, white edges softening the streets that had once burned with noise and neon. The gallery show was over, but my work lived on walls I'd never see again. People whispered my name in circles I never thought I'd belong to. Yet every time someone called me the artist behind the scandal, it felt like a wound disguised as applause. Damien hadn't called. He hadn't needed to. His absence was fluent in every silence, every unfinished sketch, every cup of coffee gone cold on my windowsill. I told myself I was free. I even believed it sometimes. Then one evening, as dusk painted the skyline in bruised gold, I got an email from a private foundation in D.C. They were hosting a tech art collaboration, a week-long residency for innovators and creators. The sponsor listed at the bottom made my chest tighten. Holt Industries. Of course. When I arrived at the venue, the world smelled of money and nerves. Polished floors. Glass ceilings. Too much perfume. I told myself he wouldn't be there, that this was just a cruel coincidence. But then I saw him. Across the room, Damien stood beside a minimalist sculpture, surrounded by executives pretending not to watch him. He looked almost exactly as I remembered, except for the eyes. They weren't the cool steel of a man who controlled the world anymore. They were darker. Human. He saw me before I could look away. For a second, the room faded, the lights, the crowd, the endless chatter. Just us, suspended in a moment that had been waiting months to happen. He crossed the space between us slowly as if giving me time to run. Evan. My name on his tongue still sounded like something private. You shouldn't be here, I said, though I didn't move. Neither should you. He hesitated. But here we are. We ended up outside on the terrace. The air bit cold through my coat. The city hummed below like a heartbeat we'd both tried to forget. I read about your show, he said finally. The reviews were glowing. You mean merciful? I mean honest. He turned toward me. You were always honest. That's why it worked. That's why it hurt. I let out a laugh, sharp and quiet. You had a team of lawyers write a statement calling me a mistake. That's not honesty, Damien. That's cowardice. He didn't argue. He just looked at me with that same unbearable calm, like he'd been waiting for this reckoning. I thought I could protect you by erasing you, he said. But all I did was erase myself. The wind cut between us, carrying the scent of rain and something electric. I wanted to stay angry, I did. But the truth was more complicated than anger. He hadn't just broken my trust. He'd broken the illusion that love was something we could hide behind glass and contracts. Why now? I asked. Why reach out at all? Because I can't buy silence anymore. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small folded envelope. I sold Holt Industries. All of it. The foundation bought the patents, the board took the shares. I kept one thing. What? He opened the envelope. Inside was a check, not for money but for something stranger. A deed. To what? I frowned. The loft, he said. Yours now. I stared at him. You sold your empire and gave me an apartment? It's not about the building. It's about the place where you found yourself. You made art there, Evan. You made me see myself. There was no arrogance in his voice, no manipulation, just quiet surrender. I wanted to hate him for still knowing how to reach me. But hate doesn't stand a chance when love still remembers how someone looks at you like you're the first true thing they've seen in years. We stood in silence, the city glowing beneath us. He spoke again, softer this time. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking you to let me show up. I met his gaze. Show up. For once, without owning anything. Without control. Without terms. I searched his face for the lie, but there wasn't one. Only exhaustion and hope braided together. Then show up, I whispered. Start now. He took a hesitant step closer. Then another. When he reached me, his hand brushed mine, not demanding, not desperate. Just there. The warmth of it burned through the cold. I let him stay. Weeks passed like chapters rewriting themselves. We didn't fall back into old patterns. We built new ones, slower, quieter. He'd visit my studio on Fridays, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just standing behind me while I painted. He didn't talk much and he didn't have to. Once I caught him watching me with a small, almost boyish smile. What? I asked. He shrugged. You make chaos look like art. And you make control look like regret, I shot back. He laughed, really laughed, and it felt like sunlight breaking through winter. The night my second exhibition opened, he arrived late. The crowd parted for him as if the universe had decided to make space. After the speeches and flashbulbs, I found him standing in front of a single canvas. A portrait, his portrait, painted from memory. This one's not for sale, I said quietly. Why not? Because it's the first thing I made for myself. He turned to me. Then let me earn it. I looked at him for a long time. You already did. The day you stopped trying to buy me. He reached out, tentative, reverent, and brushed his fingers against mine. And the day you stopped running. The gallery noise faded into a low hum. For a moment, it was just us again, two stories that shouldn't have found their way back but did. Later that night, as the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, we stepped outside. The city was breathing in snow and silence. He looked up at the falling flakes. Funny thing about storms, he murmured. They ruin everything and still manage to make the world beautiful. I slipped my hand into his. You're learning. He smiled, small, fragile, real. From the best. And there, under the soft weight of winter, I realized something simple and terrifying, that love wasn't about rescue or control or ownership. It was about choosing, over and over again, the one person who reminds you who you are. He bought me for a night. But somewhere between silence and surrender, between guilt and grace, he ended up owning my heart. And this time I gave it willingly.